I'm Alex, an office worker. At 23 years old, I'm now in my 5th year of service, having started working immediately after graduating from high school. Initially, being the youngest and without any part-time job experience, I received kind support from my superiors. Despite my limitations, I worked hard and gradually became accustomed to this job. In the 5th spring of my tenure, I was assigned to be the chief of a project for the first time, marking the beginning of a tumultuous period. My name is Emma. Nice to meet you. On the first day of the new fiscal year, that's how the new employee, a fresh college graduate in her first year, greeted everyone. With her striking looks and a confident smile. Her outgoing personality meant she showed no signs of nervousness from day one. And that's to be expected, since she is the only daughter of the company president. Displaying an attitude unbecoming of a new employee, she flaunted her status as the president's daughter. While some male employees didn't seem to mind as she got good looks, everyone was taken aback by her overly familiar demeanor. Everyone, except for me. Of course, anyone would be surprised to see a new employee, let alone the president's daughter, acting so boldly upon first meeting. But I wasn't surprised because I already knew her well. Wow, Alex, you are still here. You're surprisingly persistent. Her sarcastic tone was something I had heard often until 5 years ago, bringing back unpleasant memories in a flash. Emma, yes, I'm still here. You were so dull and clumsy, but now you're dyeing your hair and getting all cocky. A corporate debut, too late, it's hilarious. Yes, she was my high school classmate. Hair dyeing was prohibited in high school. I'm not trying to make a debut or anything. As I replied modestly, she said, well, talking back now, how cheeky. Cheeky, we're the same age, despite being technically my junior at the workplace. But to Emma, such details didn't matter. Whether a new employee or not, being the president's daughter seemed to grant her a pass for her behavior. Even though she was always haughty, arguing with her was futile. Any response would just be met with a condescending comeback. I had experienced this countless times during high school. I first met Emma in the spring of our sophomore year. We became classmates from that year. Emma was already standing out from the start of the new term, at the apex of the girls' groups. As for me, I have a few friends but not many, and I'm not particularly noticeable. I'd say I'm about average or slightly below that within the school. So, I never thought of interacting with Emma in her group, but from the very first meeting, she started with her sarcasm. Hey, is that fun? At the time, I was into card games and would play with friends during breaks. After eavesdropping, Emma deliberately asked that. Well, it's fun, I said. To which she laughed loudly and commented, seriously, nerds are like kids, doing the same things as elementary schoolers. Despite never having spoken to me before, she deliberately approached me just to say something like that. I was completely baffled by her behavior and felt something akin to astonishment. As for me, I think wearing makeup and accessories against school rules and getting scolded by teachers every day is way more childish. Back then, I didn't think before speaking and blurted out what was on my mind. This infuriated Emma. That must have really bothered her, as she started picking on me daily with sarcastic remarks. I've gotten myself into trouble. I shouldn't have said that. Regretting it in my mind was too late. Hoping she would tire of me, I stopped responding altogether, which probably made her think she had won. We ended up in the same class for all 3 years of high school, and I had to endure her sarcastic remarks every day. It wasn't outright bullying, but being subjected to daily sarcasm was quite mentally taxing. The worst part was her comments about where I was going to work. Hey, I heard you got a job. Though I hadn't told anyone but my close friends, somehow Emma knew about it. Wondering how she found out, I simply replied, well, yeah. Pitiful that you can't even go to college. Are you poor or something? Choosing the wrong family to be born into really makes life hard, doesn't it? I'm so glad I'm me, she taunted. Why do I have to listen to Emma's bragging just because we're talking about my job? While I waited for her to leave, Emma dropped a bombshell. I heard from a teacher that you're going to work at my dad's company. That was a real shock. I knew her father was a company president and that their last name was Johnson, which I had found out while preparing for my interview. But it never crossed my mind that they were related, considering how common the surname is. To think that the company I was so excited to join belonged to the father of the classmate I disliked. I couldn't hide my shock. Funny, you look so upset. Don't worry, I plan to join my dad's company after graduating college, but you probably won't last 5 years there, so we won't have to work together. She laughed out loud at that. She looked down on me and kept using it as a topic of ridicule until graduation. Going to work at my dad's company. I can get in without doing anything. It's pathetic that you have to try so hard, she mocked. His company is so stylish, but you'll stick out like a sore thumb with your country bumpkin vibe, she teased. I endured her sarcasm until graduation, finally feeling liberated from Emma when I started working. But the 5 years passed quickly. I knew she would join the company someday. Even though I knew we would meet again, I stayed at this company because I didn't want to admit defeat. Honestly, I never wanted to see Emma's face again and could have even looked for another job. But if I wasn't there when she arrived, she would surely say, "I knew you wouldn't last," and laugh about it. Just the thought was unbearable. So, I decided to grow so much that she'd be shocked when she joined. I was determined to prove her wrong. That's what kept me going for 5 years. But reality didn't go as planned, and Emma joined the project I was leading right after she was hired. Despite not wanting to deal with her, I was more motivated than ever, seeing it as an opportunity to prove her wrong. However, Emma was still the same, if not worse, than in high school. Alex as a chief, that's worrying. Wouldn't it be better if I did it? She'd interrupt during meetings. Moreover, she would make off-target suggestions like, "Is this discussion even meaningful? Why not just do it this way?" As if she was absolutely right. And to top it off, she never apologized for being late. She would also leave early without notice. Her self-centered behavior quickly became the talk of the company, but she didn't care, saying, "Dad would forgive me. I'm a special case as the president's daughter." No one dared to confront her due to her father's influence. I realized that no matter how well I performed, she wouldn't care, and proving her wrong seemed impossible. So, I focused on making this project, my first as a chief, a success. That became my main goal. But then, "Have a good evening," Emma said, getting up to leave right at the end of the workday. It was normal to leave at that time, and we weren't a company that demanded constant overtime. But still. "Hey, Emma, what about the documents due today?" Feeling genuinely worried, I had to ask. There had been documents due for weeks, and Emma hadn't submitted them yet. "Oops, I forgot. Alex, can you handle it?" Hearing that response, I couldn't just stay silent. "No, that's impossible. I've got a lot to do myself, and everyone else is busy with their work too. You can't just pass your tasks to others. You need to take responsibility and finish your own work. If this were a private matter, I'd prefer to ignore it, but this is work, and it can't be taken lightly. This could cause inconvenience to others and our clients." Then, unusually raising her voice, Emma said, "It's ridiculous that I can't leave at the end of my shift. I was busy, so it can't be helped. Isn't it your fault for assigning more work than can be done by the deadline?" Indeed, I think there is some truth to her point about work allocation. But honestly, I knew from the beginning that Emma wouldn't work seriously. I had only asked her to do basic documentation, and she spent most of her time on her phone or browsing makeup online. hardly working at all. Hearing her say she was busy when she planned to leave on time just didn't sit right with me. Busy? What were you doing today then? Tell me what work you did. Can you say that in front of other employees who've been working hard all day? Even the articulate Emma couldn't find words to retort and just glared at me. Eventually, she said, "It's impossible. I have a mixer to go to, and overtime is out of the question. If you keep being annoying, I'll tell my dad. You'll be fired in no time," and stormed towards the exit. Many of my colleagues, fearing her words, didn't dare to confront the new employee, Emma. But that's just wrong. Everyone else is working hard. It's unfair that I, who work sincerely, might get fired, while she, who plays around, acts so superior. It would be absurd if that actually happened. Realizing that arguing was futile, I pondered my next steps. I had planned to work until the last train just on my tasks, but maybe I could finish everything if I pulled an all-nighter. I tried to avoid overtime for others, only to overload myself. That's why I couldn't handle these troubles effectively. Thinking about it, maybe Emma was right about my misallocation. I might not have a leg to stand on if I were fired. Ouch! I heard Emma's voice from the direction of the door and looked over. There stood a person I didn't recognize. A middle-aged man in a clean, sharp suit, someone I had never seen before. As I wondered who he might be, I heard Emma say, "Dad, why?" And then I realized. This man was Mr. Johnson, the president, whom I was meeting for the first time. If he had witnessed this whole scene, things might be resolved quickly. Was I about to be fired immediately? Frozen with fear of what President Johnson might say, I noticed Emma acting strangely. Well, I expected her to claim I was bullying her and push for my termination, but she seemed flustered. Then President Johnson simply said, "No need to say anything." Emma fell silent, unable to argue back. It was the first time I saw her so compliant, which was, of course, expected. "You're fired, effective today." With President Johnson's next words, the office fell into a hushed silence. So it's come to this. President Johnson is human too. Seeing his daughter upset would naturally affect him. But was I wrong? What was the right thing to do as a chief? It's too late for regrets, but I couldn't help feeling frustrated. "Yes, I apologize," I answered softly. I had a lot of counter-arguments in mind, but I doubted that talking back to President Johnson would change the outcome. After all, he's Emma's father. Just as I had resigned myself to the inevitable. President Johnson said, "No, there's nothing for you to apologize for." Shocked, I looked up. What? There stood President Johnson with a look of exasperation, and Emma, pale-faced. "It's you, Emma, who's being fired. Did I ever say you could do whatever you want just because you're the president's daughter? You seem to be under some misconception. I let you join this company not because I thought you could do as you pleased, but as a learning experience, given your naivety and selfishness. I thought it would be too troublesome to have you hired elsewhere, but it seems my message didn't get through." From his demeanor, President Johnson was quite different from what I had imagined. I had always thought he doted on Emma and spoiled her. He seemed strict, and Emma looked tense in his presence. "Sorry, Dad. I'll be serious from now on. As the president, I cannot implore someone who behaves selfishly without considering the inconvenience to other employees." Despite Emma's tearful apologies, there was no sign of forgiveness. Finally, President Johnson ignored her and apologized to us, the employees. "I'm truly sorry for the trouble my daughter has caused. I'd like to finish the work she left undone." His offer surprised us, and though we hesitated, he insisted, so we accepted his help. Emma continued to sob, begging her father to reconsider the firing, but he never agreed. It was a pitiable sight, far from her usual haughty demeanor. But given her past behavior, No one sympathized with her. Thanks to President Johnson, we completed the documentation on time, and the project was a success. It was rare for him, mostly stationed overseas, to be at the headquarters. The supervisors were astonished to see him working on a project, doing tasks usually assigned to new recruits. I was nervous throughout, but working with him showed me he was a strict yet considerate leader. It was hard to understand how someone like him could have a daughter like Emma. In the end, Emma was fired from the company. I heard through the grapevine, and I'm not sure if it's true, but apparently, President Johnson had told her that if she couldn't make it in this company, the next step would be training at a rural subsidiary factory. I don't know what she's up to these days. But I do hope this experience has changed her, even just a little, to be more like an average person,